Welcome to Uncle's channel. Thanks for watching today, and let's continue our journey to finish every single Game Boy and Game Boy Color game. And today focusing on a game called The Final Fantasy Legend for the original Game Boy. Now notice it has the word "the" in front of it, and it's the only Final Fantasy game that ever has the word "the" in front of it. Even the future Final Fantasy Legend games do not have the word "the" in front of the title there. And the second interesting thing about the title is it's actually not a Final Fantasy game at all. It's the first game in a series called Saga, and the Saga series is still going on even to this day. A brand new game just came out. It says here April of 2024, so like the franchise is still going. But they changed the title to Final Fantasy because that was the best-selling RPG in North America, and they wanted to capitalize on that franchise, and capitalize they did because it says they sold 1.37 million units of Final Fantasy Legend, Square's best-selling game for many, many years. Now, Final Fantasy Legend is one of the very first RPGs on the Game Boy, and it's going to be a victim of its time in some aspects, as far as like having a very simple overarching story, a very simple battle system, a very simple, character sprites, such as that. But at the same time, it is going to also have some very unique aspects about it, such as like the leveling up system. There are multiple classes in the game, and every class levels up in a different way, and you have to sort of keep up with that as you go. And so even though it's very basic in some aspects, it's also very unique at the same time. And to me, it's one of the most fun RPGs I've played in this challenge. It's very simple, but it's easy to zone out to. And honestly, as I was going through it, I just simply had a lot of fun. And we can't forget to mention this game is also a heavy influence on the very first Pokemon game. And so if you enjoy Pokemon, you're probably going to enjoy this game as well, because there are a lot of similarities. And there's also one character that I am almost 99% sure that they took from this game and put into Pokemon. But we'll get to that later on in the video, and you can tell me your thoughts about it as well. But I am like 99% sure they lifted it straight from this game and just simply stuck it into Pokemon. Now, this particular game did get moved up in our queue a good bit because Sega Kid J requested one of my earlier videos, so naturally moved up in the queue. If there's a game that you want to see me cover sooner or later, let me know the name of the game in the comments down below. And just like Final Fantasy Legend, or I'm sorry, The Final Fantasy Legend, I'll move it right on up in the queue. But let's go ahead and dive into the actual game. Now, I like to start the videos up and look at the box art for the game first. And the box art for Final Fantasy Legend here, I mean, it summarizes the game pretty well. You have a little helmet here, a sword, a treasure chest, and a key, a little light shining down. I mean, it really does like sort of, play into the RPG treasure hunting aspect of it. And that's not really like the overarching story of the game. The overarching story is like trying to climb a tower, get to paradise. And this right here just sort of, I don't know, it's sort of generic and sort of says like, if you enjoy treasure hunting, you enjoy RPGs, you'll enjoy this game. So it really did probably play into the sales of the game. But as far as like summarizing the actual game itself, I mean, it's an average job. The Japanese cover, though, was like way better on here. They have like the main characters on here. You have some of the monsters in the background. I know it's all in black and white, but like it's a really cool looking cover and way more action oriented. And I feel like summarizes the game way better than the American cover. But, like I said, they were obviously doing it for sales, and like right there, I think proof is in the pudding. This was a good selling cover. Now, when you load the game up here, the title screen is going to be pretty basic, but the song that plays in the background is not basic at all, and really sort of sets the tone for a great soundtrack for the game as a whole. I mean, like Squaresoft in this era, like they rarely missed, honestly, when it came to great songs. I'll let a little bit of it play right here. And like I said, this is just simply the title screen song. It's a great soundtrack pretty much from start to finish as you go through the game. And I'm pretty sure some of these songs probably like play into like more orchestrated versions of more updated songs in later Saga games, because there's no reason to reinvent the wheel on some great tunes here. Now, when you begin the game, you do get a very much of a simple overarching story here, just all text-based, no pictures. And it basically tells a story of a giant tower in the center of the world. As you climb the tower, more worlds are unlocked. So like every level of the tower, or every floor of the tower has different worlds on it. And whoever gets to the very top of the tower actually achieves paradise, or like goes to heaven and whatnot. And so people have tried to climb the tower, but no one has made it. And so that's the goal of me and my team, is see if we can actually make it all the way to the top of the tower and achieve paradise. Now, we do get to choose the first of our 4 characters here, and this first character is the only one that you cannot replace like later on in the game. You are stuck with this character start to finish, so pick wisely here. But you can choose either a human or a mutant or a monster. And for the human and mutants, you can do male or female. And for the monsters, you can do a Clipper, a Red Bull. I wonder if that's where they got the name for the energy drink. It just dawned on me there. A were-rat or a zombie. And I mean, look, just pause for a second, look at the Werebull, because that is clearly clearly a lizard sprite. And I don't know, like some of the sprites in this game are very much of a mixed up. They don't really match up with like what the words actually are. But regardless, this is evidently a Red Bull. But depending on which class you start with, whether a human, a mutant, or a monster here, it depends on how they're going to level up as they go. And I'm going to sort of stack my team as a variety team so I can sort of experiment all of the leveling as I journey throughout. But I'm going to start my first member here. I'm going to choose a male human, and I'm going to name him Ogle because Ogles wouldn't fit. And so we know we do the best that we can here. And in the opening town, we get to see the tower in the background. And truth be told, the opening tower here opening town is really basic when it comes to decorations. Like the game actually gets more graphically enhanced or graphically impressive as it journeys on, but the starting town here is just basic beyond all measure. There's not a lot to see here. There's not a lot of texture on the ground, any trees, any real houses, nothing like that. Very, very basic. All the normal RPG stuff is here, where you can like upgrade your weapons, buy new armor. You can buy different HP upgrades or strength or agility upgrades. That's actually how you're going to upgrade our character. We'll get to that in a second. And you can also go to the guild here, and at the guild you can recruit the rest of your team. And so I go to the guild, and I'm going to choose one more human. I choose a female. I'm going to name her Rach after my wife Rachel. I'm going to choose a female mutant. I'm going to name that mutant Lalo after my cat Lalo. And I'm going to choose a monster for my cat Belle. I'm going to choose the albatross because sometimes Belle has like a bird or a hawk look in her eyes when she's like looking at something. And so I guess the albatross is the closest I'm going to get to a hawk. That was my thought process anyway. And this is going to be my grand team I'm going to rock throughout the entire game. Rach, Lalo, Belle, and me, Ogle, are going to journey to the top of this tower and try to find this paradise as we go. Now I do notice I don't have any money, so I can't purchase anything from the shops or upgrade my equipment. So I journey out into the field here to get into a few battles to sort of raise my income a little bit. I go out there, I get into a battle with a goblin, an albatross, a lizard, and all the sprites are pretty good here. The lizard's probably the best one with like little bulging eyes or like a chameleon type creature. But even though the sprites were pretty darn good for the characters, the battle system itself was a little bit on the weaker side because like if you had multiple of the same monster here, you couldn't actually choose which monster you wanted to attack. You just simply had to attack the monster in general. And it sort of like went down the line as far as like which one is going to actually do the damage to. And so like your strategy is very limited on how you want to fight these battles. But when you do finish a battle, you don't actually get experience points or level up or anything like that. You just simply get straight cash for winning the victory here. And this is going to lead us into how our characters are leveled up because every class of character is leveled up in a little bit different way. Now, human characters like me and my wife Rachel is on our team here. We can use that cash. We can go back into town and we can buy health upgrades. We can buy strength upgrades and we can buy agility upgrades to increase our strength, our agility, as well as our HP. I guess that made like total sense there. But you can also buy different armor to increase your defense. And so like you never actually level up. You just simply have to continue buying these upgrades onto your character and just keep stacking them over and over and over like your strength in order to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And your stat does max out at 99 for strength, but you can actually continue upgrading beyond that. And your character will keep getting stronger as you go. I was laying down like 800 damage toward the end of the game because I just kept like piling more and more strength upgrades into my main character here. Now the mutants actually level up more like a traditional RPG. The more battles you get into and the more moves that you use, the more likely the mutant is going to upgrade in that particular direction. So like if your mutant is using a traditional axe or a sword or something like that, their melee attacks are going to continue to upgrade and get more powerful. If your mutant focuses more on like magic attacks and mana and whatnot, your magic attacks will continue to get more powerful. So like you basically just simply by playing the game, fighting with that character, the more powerful you're going to get. And so it's more a traditional RPG. It just simply doesn't tell you any stats as you're journeying through it. And so I do like a good leveling system where it tells you like, hey, you leveled up, here are your new stats. It's never going to say that, but you can go into your character statistics here. You can look at your mutant and sort of see like how they're going. Now the monster character is going to be the weirdest one when it comes to upgrade system. They don't actually upgrade from the money system. They don't upgrade from just simply going to battle. They only upgrade like when you kill another monster. It leaves behind like a little pile of meat, and if you feed that meat to your monster will then mutate into a new monster. And sometimes it's a more powerful monster, and sometimes it's a weaker monster, and you sort of take your gamble here on every time you upgrade your monster or I guess feed meat to your monster. I pretty much only upgraded my monster like when I defeated the boss battle because that was a guaranteed good meat product, and Belle always mutated into a very powerful creature after a boss battle, so I sort of kept that up as you go. But I don't like the idea that your monster is very, very stable and just sort of stays the same while everybody else continues to grow stronger, and it's just like one giant leap for your monster. But even though I don't really like the monster, I do like the idea that there are multiple classes and every class upgrades in its own individual way. A very unique aspect to the game, and I've never played another game with that particular leveling system. But let's get back into the story here. Now we can't actually get into the tower unless we have a sphere to unlock the opening door, and then we can journey our way up into paradise. So we leave our first town, we journey to a new town called the Town of Hero. In the center of the town here is a giant statue of a hero, and the hero is missing its armor, it's missing its sword, and it's missing its shield. But once all of these pieces are returned to the statue will then present over to us a gift of the sphere, and we can use that to journey on into the tower. So our first goal here is going to be to find each of these pieces of equipment, return them to the statue in order to get the sphere. And so we find out from talking to some of the local town folk here that there are 3 kings in the area. They're always constantly fighting against each other. They're always in a feud. And each king is taking a piece of the equipment. And so we need to go to approach all of these kings, negotiate with them how we can sort of make peace and try to get the equipment from them to return it to the statue. And so we journey off here. Our first king we approach is the Shield King, and he like waves us off. He's like, I don't got time for you, and just sort of pushes off to the side. And we're obviously not supposed to approach him yet. So I journey off into the northeast. I find the king who has the armor set, and he's actually a pretty jolly little fella here. He actually says he will give me the armor set if I can convince a girl who lives in the southern town to fall in love with him. And I'm like, well, I can't convince anybody to fall in love with you, but I can talk up your best qualities here. Maybe he has like the best style, maybe he has like the best king's robe and things like that. So I was like, I'll head down there and I'll talk to this girl. So I go down to the town to the south and I find the girl down there, and it doesn't look anything like a girl. It actually looks more like a little octopus here, which is really, once again, the confusing sprites they have to line up with the characters. I don't know what they were thinking when they did the game, or it's like poor translation or something like that. Something's off with the sprites and the names. But we talked to the girl and she actually says she would love to be the queen to the king and, be married to him. However, she actually is already engaged to a bandit or a criminal of the local area, and she has to marry him. Otherwise, he's going to destroy the entire town. So her hand in marriage is dependent upon the safety of her entire town. So she's like, my hands are tied. I have no choice but to marry the bandit. I'm like, you know what? This bandit fella doesn't sound like too good of a fella. We're going to go take out the bandit. So I journey off to the bandit's hideout. I find the bandit and I get into a battle with him. And the bandit caught me off guard once again because of the sprites here and sort of the names. Like when you think of bandit, I think of like a goblin. I think of a human. I think of some sort of humanoid creature at least. And I got a lizard I'm fighting against. So it's like, how is this lizard, the bandit, who's going to be marrying this octopus queen to take over control of a human town to prevent her from marrying a human king? I don't know. Some of the stuff here, it's got to be lost in translation. Has to be somewhere along the line. The story is very odd, with the sprites here. But I defeat the bandit. I actually get some meat from him. I feed it to my monster, Belle. And Belle actually transforms into a triceratops called Ani. And it's like, how did I get a triceratops out of a lizard? And so I know, I guess during this time period, people may have thought dinosaurs came from lizards still instead of birds. That's at least a logic I'm going to make here, but later on some of the transformations don't make any sense, and I feel like it is sort of a flip of the coin of what transformation you're going to get from the monster of a boss. But we go back and tell the girl that she can marry the king. We tell the king he can marry the girl, and at this point the king just simply gives us the armor like he agreed to, and so we are 1/3 of the way there to finding our sphere to unlock the tower. And so now we journey off to our second king. He's going to be the king who has the sword. And the king who has the sword doesn't have a sweet deal for us here, trying to make someone fall in love, something like that. We just simply have to fight the king here. We end up murdering the king. And once we murder him, we take the sword. So it's just a very much of a drastic difference in those two plot lines. But we take the sword. We journey off now to the third king, who's going to be the Shield King, the first one we talked to. We get there and we find out that king has actually been killed by his steward. And the steward basically killed him to get the shield. He tries to escape from us, but we follow him through this little secret passage here. We get to the steward. We kill him in one single hit or one single round of moves here. Super easy. All the enemies at this point are really easy. And really the whole game as a whole is going to be pretty darn easy. It's a great intro RPG. There's not a ton of grinding involved. Now, when we finish the steward off, Rachel has some very strong words against him. She calls him scum of the earth or something like that. And says people like him make her sick. And I guess he did just kill the king to get the shield. And so she's naturally upset about that. But didn't we 20 minutes ago just kill a king to get his sword? And so I don't know, some of the moral contradictions here don't line up quite right with what my team is doing. But and there's even more of that toward the end game. We'll get to that as we go. But the game really doesn't shy away from actually murdering people in the game. You can go up to the steward afterwards and it says this person is dead, and you can go up to all types of characters in the game, and it'll just simply straight out tell you this person has been killed, this person is dead. There's an entire village at one point. You walk up to every single citizen and it will say to every citizen, this person is dead, this person is dead. And where Pokemon, other RPGs, sort of I don't know, tried to go softer on that, people fainted or people faded away. Like this game here is like, nope, we're just going to go balls to the wall, death destruction on your sweet little journey up to the Paradise Tower. But I don't know, it's just sort of an odd moral ambiguity. Is that the right word? Ambiguity? Yes, moral ambiguity for this game. But once you have all the pieces of the equipment here, we go back to the statue, we put it on the statue, we're getting ready to get the sphere, and then a giant monster, looks like a turtle brachiosaurus, comes crashing down and is going to have one last battle with us, so as far as like the boss of this particular area. And his name is Jinbu? Genbu. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. But like I said, it looks like a giant turtle brachiosaurus. Cool creation. Reminds me a little bit of that creature in Contra. At least the third Contra anyway, where like the turtle comes bursting through the wall in the earlier level, has like a little heart down below. You have to take it out. Great boss for that game. And overall, a pretty cool looking sprite for this game as well. But not a challenging one in this game at all. It took like 2 solid turns and like he was wiped out. No contest at all. But once he's taken out, you do get your first sphere, and you can take that back to the tower, and now we can journey our way into the tower, trying to find our way to the next world here. And in the tower, we get some new monsters we're going to fight against. We get a snake, we get a gargoyle, and we do get a slime, just like every other RPG out there. I think I mentioned in one of my earlier RPG videos, like every single RPG you play, you're going to get at least one slime. And this game is no exception to the early RPG slime rule. Now, when you're in the tower, you're trying to journey up 5 particular levels here in order to get to the next main world. But you can actually journey into like a lot of those smaller worlds here. And I don't really think there's anything like to do in the smaller worlds. It just like adds to simply the lore here of like places you can explore. Or maybe there's like items and such you can find. I sort of backed out on some of them because I was like, this is getting pretty intense. And characters aren't quite healed up enough to really journey through it. Like there was one I came to, and it was like almost like I walked into hell here. It's like these gargoyles were torturing these humans and whatnot. Very much of a hellish looking landscape. I was like, I am not leveled up anywhere near high enough to journey through this to find the weapons. So I went ahead and left that, continue on the main journey here till I got to my next main world. But it is cool, like inside the tower here, you can journey out and you can find like all different like little miniature worlds that the creators have actually put into the game here, just simply to add to the lore or add to the story if you want to make the game a little bit more richer. Now, the second main world we're going to get into here, as far as like continuing the storyline, is going to be more like an ocean world. And this ocean world here is going to have a fairly unique story. There's like 2 brothers. One's like a king and one's a dragon. And they sort of fight for control over the land. They both have a red orb or a blue orb. And only when those 2 orbs are brought together can we form a sphere in order to unlock our next key to advance higher up in the tower. And so our goal here is to find these 2 orbs, combine them in order to continue our journey. And so we set forth here, journeying from island to island. And it's like a almost like an underground cave network that we're going through. And as we're going through this, it's sort of like different paths you can take. Reminds me a lot of Death Mountain and Zelda 2. You don't really know like which path you're going on, just sort of a trial and error here. And eventually you come across this little plot of land. And when you get on this little plot of land, do you think it's like a little island? No, not an island at all. It's actually your ship. And you can like set sail on this little plot of land and journey around the entire ocean world. And it does beg the question, like, why didn't they just make a sprite for a boat and you could just simply journey around the ocean world on a boat? Like, why do they do it on a plot of land? It doesn't make any sense, like lore-wise. It doesn't make any sense for the story. A boat would make complete and utter sense, but they chose to go with this weird little plot of land and you just sort of float around on that. I don't know. Very odd. And speaking of odd, like when you're in the ocean here floating around and whatnot, you get sucked into some more battles, but the battles you get sucked into are not against like ocean creatures or sea creatures. It's just simply the random monster that you've encountered earlier. Like you get sucked into like a battle with a magician. You're like, why is the magician just sort of like, floating out here in the middle of the ocean? Once again, doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's sort of a victim of the time for these early RPGs where they sort of, I guess, lacking code in some places, sort of plugged other things in. And I feel like this is one of those instances. But you journey through the ocean world here. You can like journey under the water at one point with an air siege. You can explore like an entire town underwater. You can journey and visit like a little old man in a hut and whatnot. And you do get more clues as far as like where these orbs are going to be by talking to the town folk. But it was when I was underwater here, I actually got into a battle and my main character, Ogle, passed away. And when he passed away, I knew I had to go back to the town in order to heal him up. And he's passed away a couple more times inside the game, but this was his last heart when he passed away. And in order to revive your character once they've lost all their hearts, at least your main character anyway, you have to buy a heart from the item shop. And it cost $10,000 to revive my character. I bet it took maybe 40 minutes of grinding just simply to get enough money in order to bring my main character back to life. And so it was a very hard lesson learned earlier in the game. Do not let your main character lose all of its hearts Otherwise, you're simply going to have to waste a significant amount of time here just simply to continue the game. But eventually I do find my way into a castle here, and inside the castle there's like a room with all these orbs and whatnot, and you have to go up to one specific orb and press the A button in order to get into a boss battle against Sai-Ryo, which is going to be one of the leaders here. He's actually the dragon one who has half of the orb. And so it's really cryptic here when you think about it. Like the idea to walk up to a random orb and just press A to figure that out would be a almost impossibility because there's no hint of it in the dialogue. Maybe it's in the instruction manual or something like that, but there's no hint in the dialogue because I talked to like every single townsperson in this entire game. And I don't know, I did have to look in a walkthrough to figure out like which orb to hit in order to advance the story. But once you are sucked into the battle here, it's very much like a Chinese dragon of legend and whatnot. Took like 3 turns, really easy. When he passed away, I got some more meat. I fed it to Bell, and Bell becomes what's called a gazer, G-A-Z-E-R. I don't know what a gazer is, but when you beat him, there's no post dialogue. It's not like, hey, you beat me, here's your next spot to go. You're like, well, where the heck am I supposed to go now? So I have half the orb, I have the blue orb, and now I need to get the red orb. And it turns out you have to go back to the same little old man in the hut on the village, and he has the other orb, and only have to do like a little puzzle riddle and like deliver a specific item to him, will he actually give you the other orb. And I guess like it sort of begs the question, like, what happened to this particular world here? You had 2 kings. You had the Dragon King, you had the regular king. One Dragon King went off to rule the ocean and just sort of wreak havoc, and the other king just sort of gave it all up and went to live in a hut somewhere and gave up all of his riches and whatnot. And so it's like, what happened in the story? There is more lore in this game. I don't know if they like just really cut it down for the English translation, or if it's like in a manual, or there's like an accompanying book to go along with this. But it just seems like there's a lot in here that's just simply not said. But now that I have my 2 orbs, I can combine them together. I got my next sphere, and I can go back to the tower and continue to advance. Now, one thing I haven't mentioned a whole lot in the video is every time before I advance a tower or I get to a new world and things like that, I do journey into the shop here and I spend my money to upgrade my stats for my human characters. I get new armor, I get new weapons, and such as that for all of my characters. And it is very important to continue to buy new weapons for your characters because every weapon has a, I'm going to call it durability. Because like every weapon, you only get so many shots with it before the weapon just disappears. And so you do have to sort of like keep an eye on that and continue to buy new weapons. And I'm not like a huge fan of that. I like buying a weapon and you simply have that weapon. And the idea that the weapon just eventually disintegrates and goes away, and you have to save up to buy another one or watch your money to get another one. Not a huge fan of that system, but once you get used to it and you sort of know like which weapons are the better ones to get, it does get a little bit easier. So I journey back to the tower. I begin to go up some more floors here, get some new items, find some new enemies. I get into a battle with a what's called a woodsman, which is clearly a golem made out of stone, but they decided to call him a woodsman. You get a really questionable Medusa in here as well. I'm not sure how that got past the censors. And you also have a officer you can talk to, and the officer like gives advice every time you get ready to go into a next main world. And the officer gives advice for this one that says, become a guard fast and getting good with the king in order to advance quickly. And so you're like, all right, so I need to become a guard to the king in order to accomplish this mission in order to get my next sphere. So like a little hint as you're journeying in there. And so our next main world here, our 3rd main world, is going to be a sky world. And the graphics for this one are getting a little more advanced, a little more detailed. And so like I said, the game is going to get a little more complex as it goes. And for this particular world, it has an odd story. There's a king who's an evil king. He's ruling over. His name is Bayek-ko. Once again, correct me on pronunciations down below. But Bayek-ko here is a mean authoritarian dictator of this particular sky world. And there was a fellow named Charles who was leading a resistance, but Charles has since been executed. But before he was killed, he took the sphere, which is what the king wanted all along, for ultimate power in this particular world. He divided amongst his 2 twin daughters, and only when the daughters put their spheres together can at that point the original sphere be restored and the king be granted his ultimate power. Or for our case, the sphere is what we need in order to advance it next inside the tower. And so we're working for the king to find these 2 sisters in order to unite the sphere. We're just simply going to take it for ourselves instead of giving it to the king. So we're like going to work for him, but then betray him at the last second. And so the king does give us like a little sky glider, and we can fly around the entire world here searching for the sister. And the sister is actually in an igloo, which makes 0 sense. But you go into an igloo here. She's being attacked by some of the guards and whatnot. You rescue her, and she says, sure enough, she has half of the orb, or half of the sphere, and she needs her other sister in order to unite them together in order to give them to us. And she's willing to give it to us just simply so the king can never have it and have that ultimate power. She says that her sister has actually already been captured, is in the castle. So now we journey back to the castle. We find the other sister. So now we know where both twins are. We know where both parts of the orb are. We can officially combine them to get our key in order to escape from the tower and also to prevent the king from ever gaining ultimate power. But then the king shows up and he said, I knew you would betray me. And he goes, I had anticipated this, but now that you've told me where the location of both of the twins are, now at this point, I can officially capture them both and I can combine the sphere in order to make myself the ultimate leader of this entire world. He throws us into a dungeon here, and while we're in the dungeon, it seems like we're trapped, doomed forever down there. But it says like only with a certain amount of strength can you open up the bars of the cell. And I guess from all the extra strength upgrades I've given my character, I just walk over there, press the A button, and you just sort of open it right up. And it's like, why was this even a puzzle? Like, this is not a puzzle at all. You just simply press a button and it happens. But anyways, you're journeying out here. You can actually go up to another cell and you can talk to it, and you can get what's called a talking sword. Like, the sword actually talks to you, and there's no extra development on the quest with that. There's no development of a storyline. You just got a random talking sword here, I guess, that you could use in battle. I never actually did use it, so maybe I had like a special power inside the battle. But we get out of the jail, we end up finding the king, we get into a battle with him, and the king sprite here is like top tier. You got this lion king, which is a already great sprite, but then you combine his two weapons. One's like a double-bladed sword, one's like a double-sided trident, and just a great sprite. Not a hard boss, but a great sprite anyway. And once you finish him off in like 2 turns, you talk to the twin sisters. They actually give you 2 sides of the orb. You can combine those. Now you have your sphere, and you can continue back to the tower and journey on your way back up into paradise. Now, I will say when I get back into the tower, this is probably the hardest that the tower has ever gotten. Like, the game itself has been pretty easy up until this point. When I got into the tower here, like, almost my entire team died in the tower. I only had 1 character left at the close of it, and barely got out alive, but I did have tons of money when I got out. So overall, it's like worth it here, but this is definitely the hardest journeying part of the game as you're journeying on to your next world. And the next world here is a, I don't know, like a normal city setting. And this is where I think Pokemon like borrowed something from this game. Because you journey into the city here, and there's a legendary bird called the Suzaku. And it looks very much like a legendary bird Pokemon called Zapdos. And of course, the legendary Pokemon Zapdos was located in a power plant inside the game. And guess where this bird is located at? Inside a power plant inside the game. And so, I don't know, like for a fact they stole it, but I feel like Zapdos and Suzaku are probably the same bird, just simply borrowed one game to the other, and or at least the inspiration of it was brought over from this game. It's just too much to have an electric bird in a power plant with a similar look, both starting with the letters ZA, in 2 games separated by like 8 years, when the creator of Pokemon said they took inspiration from this game. I don't know, but it's at least my thought anyway. But we get to our very first town here, and at the first town there's like a biker gang, and they're also against the legendary bird because it's wreaking havoc across the entire landscape here. And they said we need to shut down the power plant to really get at the bird. And so they actually give me a free bike, and if you're traveling on a bike, the legendary bird is less likely to attack you or hurt you on your journey. We get to the power plant, we shut the power plant down, we journey off to a skyscraper. We get to the skyscraper, we have to journey all the way to the top of the skyscraper. At some point, the head of the biker gang does make a sacrifice of himself in order to continue on our journey. And he does this just simply to make sure the town is completely safe and also to save his sister. And when we get to the very top of the tower here, we get our final showdown with Zaku. And Zaku is, once again, a really easy boss. There's actually an instant death move that you can use. And it's turn him into stone, and he just dies pretty much immediately. It's a great move to use, and you can do that on a whole lot of enemies. And it's a spell that you can learn or a book that you can buy from the shop, and you can have your mutant learn that particular spell. But when I do take out the bird, I do get meat from him, and I feed it to Belle, and Belle turns into, for some weird reason, yet again, a Sphinx. And it's like, how do we get a Sphinx from an electric legendary bird? I don't know. It's just odd. But once the legendary bird is finished off, the biker gang and the sister of the leader here, they give me the final sphere I'm going to need to open up the last little bit of the tower. I journey back into the tower. I go for these few levels here. I do come across a side world. It's a really beautiful little side world, like little flowers everywhere, like a little nature garden or a little forest I'm journeying through. Talk to an old man. He gives me like a sword called Excalibur, which is obviously a legendary sword in, European legend anyway. And so it's sort of cool they've, implemented it into this game. But it does go to show, like, if you actually journey off the main path here and explore some of the little side, smaller worlds, you can actually get some pretty good items as you go. And so I probably should have explored more as I was journeying through it. I just simply didn't have my level up in the early part of the tower high enough to really do that. But we continue on the little tower here. We're actually not going to get to another main floor yet. And we actually fight against a creature known as Ashura. And it is a multi-armed, godlike looking figure here. But once again, really easy to take out. It takes like 3 turns and pretty much destroyed in no time. But at this point, I do get dropped back down to the very first town like I was ever at. But it doesn't like function exactly the same as the first town. Like some of the characters are new, some of the items are new. And so it's like more of a midpoint of the tower. And it's like a place you can go to sort of stock yourself up, get yourself leveled up a little bit in order for the final last few floors of the tower. Now, the last few floors when you journey into the tower here is basically going to be a greatest hits of all the major bosses so far. Like you journey up multiple towers, fight one of the earlier bosses. Journey up multiple towers, fight one of the earlier bosses. Multiple towers, I mean, you get the point. I don't have to keep saying it here. But the journey from boss to boss is actually a really long journey. I actually thought, like, as I was going through it, like, is this going to be like one of those Lost Woods type puzzles? And I've just sort of missed the mark of what's different to sort of journey off on the side path. But I had not, and you just simply have to continue journeying higher and higher on the tower here, fighting all these creatures off as you go. And when you get to the final top floor of the tower here, you can actually have a little orb, you can heal yourself up, and you journey off, and it's like a completely blank area again, just totally white all the way around. You have to journey through, find like a little river at the top, you follow the river along, and you come across a little character or a little sprite from earlier in the game who was like the intro character for all the major worlds that you were going to travel into. And it turns out that this character here is actually known as the Creator. And the Creator basically constructed this entire tower. They constructed all these individual worlds, and it was just simply all an experiment to sort of see how people reacted in different situations, how they act in the ocean world, how they act in the sky world, how they act in the hell world, the gargoyles, how they act in the nature world where you're by yourself in these flower gardens. And so it's just simply all an experiment to see how people react and how they handle different situations. And she was really interested in our case because we were actually trying to go through all the worlds and try to solve all the problems. It was just sort of like, well, what are they going to do next? Like we were just simply, they were watching us like, like ants on an ant farm or something. And so very demeaning almost for someone to create the entire world here and just sort of like an experiment to sort of see how we, thrive in struggles and whatnot, and just sort of to watch us suffer to a degree. But at this point, we get, obviously upset at the Creator. And so then we go to battle against the Creator. And I have to say, like, if there was ever a battle I was expecting to be like really hard in the game, this should have been it, because they like literally created the entire world, including us. We shouldn't be able to take out the Creator, but I don't know, like 4 turns later, the Creator is, of course, killed off. And once the Creator is killed, we're like, well, what now? Like, we've killed the essentially the god of the world. And so we see a door behind the Creator. And we're like, we can journey off to another world, and we can see what's happening in that world, and we could probably try to save them. We're like, but you know what? This world here of all these different, parts of the tower, they need someone to watch over it. And so I guess essentially, like, we make ourselves the new god of the entire world here, the tower, and us 4 are going to rule over it to the best of our abilities. That's the storyline I'm going with, because it does leave sort of a ambiguity here as well. And so you do have like a little greatest hits of the rest of the games, where like, the major characters that you visited as you go. And then it says, see you again, and the game is over. But let's talk about the game as an overall, because I actually really did enjoy this game quite a bit. It obviously has flaws in it. The battle system is very simple. The story is very simple. A lot of possible translation errors in it as well. But I have to say, like, the game was just simply a lot of fun. The way the different character classes leveled up, that to me was just like a really fun mechanic. So like, you were focused on getting your human characters leveled up with the money, but at the same time, you were trying to make sure you used the right items and whatnot if you're mutant, and then also eat the right material for you get your monster level up. And there's like so much to keep up with. Like, I just enjoyed the, I guess, change of pace from a normal leveling of an RPG. And I also, like, if I'm being honest, like, I've gone through so many RPGs, like a really complex story, trying to figure things out, and so many people to talk to. Like, it was nice to have a simple RPG every now and then. One is you can sort of like pick up and play. Like, the save feature on this, you can save your game at any given time. You don't have to like find a temple or find like a church or things like that in order to save your game. Save your game whenever you want, wherever you want. And so like, it just simply, the openness of that allows for a much more, I guess, pick up and play experience for an RPG. It reminded me much more of Pokemon in that aspect, as far as like, you don't have to go through and accomplish a ton of missions. Just play in, 15, 20-minute intervals. do something else for a while, play in a 15-20 minute interval, do something else for a while, and I like to pick up and play for that. And that's possibly why they went more of a basic story, just simply because you didn't have to keep up with it as much for your pick up and play sessions. And also the soundtrack is pretty top tier from start to finish, and I would like to load up at some point some of the later Saga game, at least the soundtracks, sort of see how they took the simple tunes of this one and elaborated on it for later games. But the soundtrack, top tier. Fun value, top tier. Some of the menus and the battle system, not quite top tier. Some of the lore aspects, contradictions and whatnot, and sprite mix-ups, probably not quite top tier on that either. But overall, since I did have a lot of fun with it, I can't give it below a 7. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. And I really do think it's an RPG worth playing, and one that you don't have to, like I said, sit down and play the entire thing. Pick up and play RPG, and I love that type of RPG. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos listed up above, and go out there, find a great game to play. Simply have a great rest of the day.